Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into a sector that literally touches almost every single aspect of global security and domestic policy, the United States defense and weapons industry. The scale we're talking about today is absolutely massive and, honestly, incredibly complex. This is an industry with a footprint so staggering it dictates international relations, drives cutting-edge tech innovation, and commands billions of dollars over decades. So to truly grasp how it all functions, we need to completely map it out. Okay, let's dive into this. Who actually builds the U.S. military? We constantly hear about the defense budget, or we see footage of military assets on the news, but the reality is, the military itself doesn't actually build these things. It relies entirely on a vast, multi-layered corporate ecosystem. This isn't just one or two giant companies acting as a branch of the government. We're talking about a deeply hidden operational web. This whole network spans all the way from massive aerospace conglomerates building next-gen aircraft in these sprawling facilities, right down to small, specialized manufacturers, turning out tactical gear, optics, and ammunition. So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to categorize the industry from macro to micro. First, we'll look at the defense ecosystem as a whole. Second, the big five primes. Third, tech, ships, and electronics. Fourth, commercial and tactical gear. And finally, number 5, bundling with defense ETFs. All right, starting with Section 1, the defense ecosystem, a scale taxonomy. Looking at the physical scale of what these companies build is really going to help us understand the entire market. There's a fundamental divide in this industry. It essentially splits the whole market into two major operational tiers, basically based on the sheer size of what they're building. On one side of this divide, you've got the government contracted tier. These are the massive aerospace companies dealing in multi-billion-dollar, multi-decade contracts. Their sole focus? Building immense, highly classified projects like fighter jets and sprawling missile defense systems exclusively for the government. It's all about maintaining global military supremacy. But then, on the exact opposite side, we have the commercial and law enforcement tier. These are relatively smaller manufacturers focused on producing firearms, tactical gear, and ammunition. It's a completely different operational scale. Instead of outfitting a global strike group, they're servicing commercial sporting needs, personal protection, and the day-to-day requirements of local law enforcement. Moving on to Section 2, the Big Five Primes macro-scale heavy weapons. Let's zoom out to the absolute largest scale. And this brilliantly illustrates the titans doing the heavy lifting in U.S. defense. Just 5 prime contractors supply the military with the vast majority of its heavy weaponry, aircraft, and defense systems. First up, you have Lockheed Martin, handling the advanced F-35s and pushing the boundaries of hypersonic tech. Then there's RTX Corporation, you might know them as Raytheon, acting as a total powerhouse for the Patriot missile defense system and critical avionics. Next is Northrop Grumman, focusing on advanced aerospace, including the highly classified B-21 stealth bomber and ICBM components. General Dynamics dominates the ground and sea operations, churning out things like M1 Abrams tanks and those massive nuclear-powered submarines. And finally, Boeing. While we all know them for commercial flights, Boeing has a vital defense division producing Apache helicopters and FA-18 fighter jets. Let's look a bit closer at Lockheed Martin just to truly understand what a macro-scale prime contractor actually does. They hold the title of the absolute largest U.S. defense contractor, and their whole focus is on apex high-tech aerospace defense. This is the company that acts as the primary manufacturer behind the F-35 fighter jet, which is an aviation platform so advanced it literally changed aerial combat strategies worldwide. They're also heavily invested in cutting-edge hypersonic weapons, and they build incredibly sophisticated missile defense systems. When you think of those apex government contracts, the ones that take decades of engineering, Lockheed Martin is pretty much the baseline. Which brings us to Section 3, Tech, Ships, and Electronics, the invisible backbone. This is the mid-macro level. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that number 1. That represents Huntington Ingalls Industries, or HII. They're America's largest military shipbuilder, but more importantly, they are the one single exclusive builder of U.S. Navy aircraft carriers. It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. An aircraft carrier operates basically as a floating sovereign city. It projects power across the globe, it houses thousands of personnel, it acts as a mobile runway, and yet, the creation of that incredible vessel relies entirely on a single company's manufacturing pipeline. But, physical ships and heavy armor are really only half of this backbone. The rest of it is completely invisible. Modern warfare isn't just tanks rolling across a battlefield like in the movies. It's an incredibly complex digital ecosystem.
software and sensors are just as crucial as raw firepower. L3Harris Technologies, for instance, is a huge supplier of tactical communications, electronic warfare systems, night vision, and space sensors. And then there's Palantir Technologies. They're a software company deeply integrated with the defense sector, providing AI-powered data analytics and battlefield decision support systems. In the modern era, the ability to securely and rapidly process data, that's the ultimate weapon.
Let's zoom in even further. Section 4, Commercial and Tactical Gear. Zooming in on the micro. Down at this commercial level, the sector splits into two distinct categories, basically shifting from kinetic, traditional weapons over to tech-driven compliance. On one side, we have the traditional manufacturers of small arms and ammunition, companies like Sturm, Ruger & Company, Olin Corporation, and Smith & Wesson. Their products are fundamentally mechanical. But on the other side, the market is evolving super fast. We're seeing a massive pivot toward tech-driven equipment. This includes less lethal options and electronics, spearheaded by highly innovative companies like Axon Enterprise. Let's break down exactly what these microscale companies provide. Sturm, Ruger & Company produces a wide variety of rifles and handguns tailored for the commercial sporting market. Then there's Olin Corporation. Actually, you might be surprised to learn that Olin is primarily a massive chemical company. But through that chemical expertise, they own Winchester Ammunition, which makes them a major supplier of small arms ammo for both civilians and the military. Smith & Wesson is a historic manufacturer heavily focused on personal protection and law enforcement firearms. And finally, Axon Enterprise. While definitely not a traditional firearm company, Axon is massively influential. They develop less lethal electronic weapons, like tasers, as well as officer body cameras, primarily servicing law enforcement to increase transparency and non-lethal compliance. All right, let's move to and see how this builds into Section 5, Bundling with Defense ETFs, the macro financial view. So if you're wondering how the financial markets interact with this massive, varied ecosystem, the answer is usually a defense ETF, or exchange-traded fund. For those without a deep finance background, an ETF is basically a financial tool that bundles together various companies across this entire sector. Instead of trying to pick one individual stock, like, guessing whether a nuclear submarine builder or an AI analytics company will perform better over the next 5 years, an ETF just provides broad market exposure to the industry as a whole, all in one simple package. So the crucial point is that this is how everyday investors, maybe even through your own retirement accounts, end up interacting with everything from F-35 fighter jets down to local police body cameras. Funds like the iShares U.S. Aerospace and Defense ETF, ticker ITA, track a broad index of both commercial and military aircraft and equipment manufacturers. Another major one is the Invesco Aerospace and Defense ETF, ticker PPA, which focuses specifically on companies involved directly in the development and support of U.S. defense operations. These financial instruments take that massive operational web we just explored, the big five primes, the electronic backbone, the commercial guys, and wrap them all up into a single, accessible package. Well, we've mapped out an incredible ecosystem today, from hypersonic missiles right down to body cameras. But looking at how fast software companies are integrating with heavy machinery, it leaves us with a really critical question to end on. As AI and tech continue to evolve, which defense sector will dominate tomorrow? Will it be the legacy prime contractors or that invisible electronic backbone? It's a fascinating space to watch. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope this really helped you grasp the true scale of the U.S. defense sector.